a third-generation teaching legacy that masked one of the most influential educational philanthropists in the country, and the humble farmer's daughter whose public humiliation would spark a revolution that even the school superintendent couldn't suppress. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The polished hallways of Westmont Academy echoed, with Dr. Victoria Montgomery's confident footsteps as she made her way to her advanced placement literature class. At 47, the distinguished English teacher wore her academic credentials like a shield: Yale undergraduate, Columbia doctorate, and 15 years at this prestigious private school that took pride in its selective admission process and distinguished alumni network. "Good morning, everyone," she announced, sweeping into the classroom where 20 students from the most influential families in Lakeshire sat attentively. As head of the English department, Dr. Montgomery wielded considerable influence over curriculum, student evaluations, and the coveted college recommendation letters that could make or break an application to the Ivy League. Dr. Montgomery placed her designer bag on the desk and surveyed the room with a practiced eye. Her gaze lingered momentarily on a new face in the back row, a girl with simple clothes and a notebook that wasn't the leather-bound journal most Westmont students carried. "We have a new student joining us today," Dr. Montgomery said, consulting her roster with a slight frown. "Olivia Parker from—" She paused, her eyebrow arching slightly. "Meadowbrook Farm." The subtle emphasis on the farm sent a ripple of whispers through the classroom. Westmont Academy rarely admitted students from agricultural backgrounds, situated as it was in the wealthy enclave of Lakeshire, where hedge fund managers and corporate executives built sprawling estates. "Welcome, Miss Parker," Dr. Montgomery continued. "I trust you've completed the summer reading list. We were quite explicit about the preparation required for this course." Olivia nodded, sitting up straighter. "Yes, ma'am. I've read all 7 books and prepared notes on each." "Excellent," Dr. Montgomery replied, though her tone suggested skepticism. "Then perhaps you'd like to begin our discussion on the symbolic significance of the green light in The Great Gatsby." The unexpected spotlight caused Olivia to flush slightly, but she gathered her thoughts quickly. The green light represents Gatsby's hopes and dreams, particularly his desire for Daisy, but I think Fitzgerald is also commenting on the American dream itself, how it remains tantalizingly out of reach despite our efforts, especially for those not born into privilege. Dr. Montgomery's lips thinned. "That's a rather elementary interpretation, Miss Parker. At Westmont, we expect analysis that goes beyond what one might find in a basic study guide." Several students smirked, and Olivia's cheeks burned brighter. "Would anyone care to offer a more nuanced perspective?" Dr. Montgomery asked, turning away from Olivia. Harrison Wells, son of a prominent banking executive, raised his hand. "The green light could also represent the corrupting influence of wealth, how Gatsby's pursuit of money to win Daisy ultimately leads to his downfall, suggesting Fitzgerald's critique of capitalism's empty promises." "Excellent, Harrison," Dr. Montgomery beamed. "Now that's the level of analysis we expect in this classroom." As the discussion continued, Olivia remained silent, her initial confidence shattered by the teacher's dismissal. She had earned a full academic scholarship to Westmont, based on her exceptional aptitude tests and writing samples, transferring from the public high school in her rural community, where her literature teacher had praised her insightful analyses. After class, as students filed out, Dr. Montgomery called Olivia to her desk. "Miss Parker, I'm concerned about your preparedness for this course," she said, arranging her fountain pens in perfect alignment. "Westmont maintains rigorous standards that can be quite challenging for students without the proper educational foundation." Olivia clutched her notebooks tighter. I've always excelled in English, Dr. Montgomery. I was top of my class at Meadowbrook High. Yes, well, Dr. Montgomery replied with a tight smile, excellence at a rural public school and excellence at Westmont Academy are rather different metrics, aren't they? Perhaps you should consider whether the AP track is appropriate for you. Our standard English course might be more suitable for your background. The implication hung in the air that Olivia's rural education had left her fundamentally unprepared for the intellectual demands of Westmont, regardless of her scholarship or test scores. I'd like to stay in AP literature, Olivia said quietly but firmly. I believe I can meet the standards. Dr. Montgomery sighed as if Olivia was being unreasonable. Very well, but I should warn you that I don't adjust my expectations. The curriculum was designed for students who've been prepared throughout their academic careers for this level of rigor. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Olivia left the classroom, she heard Dr. Montgomery speaking to another teacher in the hallway. Another diversity admission. They may test well, but they simply don't have the cultural context to truly appreciate literature at this level. That afternoon in the school cafeteria, Olivia sat alone, unpacking the simple lunch she had prepared herself. The other tables were filled with students chatting about summer vacations in Europe, weekend trips to Manhattan, and family connections at prestigious universities. "Mind if I join you?" asked a girl with bright eyes and a friendly smile, setting her tray down before Olivia could answer. "I'm Madison Chen," she continued, extending her hand. "AP Bio and Chemistry. I noticed you're new." "Olivia Parker," she replied, grateful for the friendly face. "Just transferred in. AP Lit and History." "Montgomery's class?" Madison grimaced. Sympathetically, "I heard what happened. Don't take it personally. She does that to anyone who doesn't come from her approved list of prep schools." "Does everyone know already?" Olivia asked, mortified. "Westmont's small and news travels fast," Madison shrugged. "For what it's worth, I thought your answer about Gatsby was spot on. I took AP Lit last year." As they talked, Olivia learned that Madison was a second-generation Chinese-American whose parents had built a successful medical research company. Unlike many Westmont students, Madison was unpretentious and genuinely interested in Olivia's background. "A working farm? That's actually fascinating," Madison said when Olivia reluctantly mentioned Meadowbrook Farm. "All my science knowledge comes from labs and textbooks. You've got practical experience with biological systems and sustainability." Olivia smiled, some of her tension easing. "It's hard work, but I love it. My dad runs the business side, and I help with everything, from planting to bookkeeping." "So why Westmont?" Madison asked. "Most farm kids around here attend Lakeshire Public." "Full academic scholarship," Olivia admitted. "My counselor at Meadowbrook High insisted I apply, said Westmont would open doors to better colleges." Madison nodded thoughtfully. She wasn't wrong, but it's not always easy if you're not part of the usual Westmont crowd. As the afternoon progressed, Olivia attended her remaining classes with growing unease. While her math and history teachers were professional, she noticed subtle assumptions in their language. Surprise when she knew answers, comments about catching up, despite her advanced placement scores. That evening, when Olivia returned to Meadowbrook Farm, the contrast between her two worlds couldn't have been more stark. The sprawling 200-acre property with its meticulously maintained fields bore little resemblance to the manicured estates of her Westmont classmates, but it represented generations of her family's hard work and stewardship. Inside the farmhouse kitchen, her father, Robert Parker, was reviewing supply contracts at the large wooden table. At 50, Robert had the weathered appearance of a man who worked outdoors, with calloused hands and sun-creased features that masked his sharp intellect and business acumen. "How was the first day at the fancy new school?" he asked, looking up from his paperwork. Olivia hesitated, then sighed. "Not great. One of my teachers basically suggested I wasn't smart enough to keep up because I'm from a farm." Robert's expression darkened. "Which teacher?" "It doesn't matter, Dad," Olivia said, setting down her backpack. "I just need to prove her wrong." "Dr. Montgomery," supplied Emma, Olivia's 14-year-old sister, without looking up from her homework. "Olivia texted me about it. She said Olivia gave a perfectly good answer about some book, and the teacher humiliated her in front of everyone." Robert frowned. "Is that true, Liv?" "She didn't exactly humiliate me," Olivia hedged, not wanting to worry her father. "She just made it clear that she doesn't think students from rural schools can handle her class." "That's ridiculous," Robert said firmly. "Your test scores and writing samples got you that scholarship, not your address." "I know, Dad." Olivia managed a small smile. "I'll be fine. I just need to adjust to their expectations." What Olivia didn't know, what almost no one in their community knew, was that her father was silently contemplating a response that would go far beyond a concerned parent's phone call or email. Later that night, after dinner and evening chores, Olivia sat at her desk working through Dr. Montgomery's demanding homework assignment, a complex analysis of narrative structure in 3 different novels. Despite the teacher's dismissal of her abilities, Olivia was determined to produce exceptional work. A knock at her bedroom door interrupted her concentration. Her father entered, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate, their traditional problem-solving ritual since Olivia's mother had passed away 8 years earlier. "Want to tell me the whole story now?" he asked gently, setting a mug beside her textbooks. Olivia described the classroom incident in detail, including Dr. Montgomery's comments about diversity admissions and the clear implication that Olivia's rural background made her intellectually inferior regardless of her academic achievements. Robert listened carefully, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "This isn't about your abilities, Liv. It's about her prejudice." "Maybe she's right, though," Olivia admitted quietly. "The other students have had advantages I haven't. Private tutors, educational travel, cultural experiences I can't even imagine." "And you've had experiences they couldn't imagine," Robert countered. "You understand things about sustainability, biology, business, and hard work that they've only read about in books." He paused, seeming to consider something carefully. "Would you want to transfer to Lakeshire Public? No one would blame you." Olivia thought about Madison's friendship and the opportunities Westmont offered. "No, I earned my place there. I'm not going to let one teacher's bias drive me away." Robert nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. "That's my girl. But if things don't improve, we may need to address this more directly." "Please don't call the school," Olivia groaned. "That would just make everything worse." "I wouldn't dream of embarrassing you," Robert promised, with a slight smile that, had Olivia been paying closer attention, might have struck her as unusual. "Get some rest, Liv. Tomorrow's another day." After leaving Olivia's room, Robert walked to his home office, a space that contrasted sharply with the rustic farmhouse aesthetic. 3 large monitors displayed complex financial data, investment portfolios, and communication threads with teams across multiple time zones. He picked up a secure phone, not the one he used for farm business, and dialed a number from memory. "James, it's Parker," he said when the call connected. "I need the jet ready tomorrow morning and clear my schedule for the next 36 hours. He listened briefly. "No, not a business emergency. Something more personal. And James, have the team pull everything they can find on Dr. Victoria Montgomery. At Westmont Academy, professional history, publications, financial situation, board connections, everything. After ending the call, Robert opened his laptop and began composing an email to Westmont Academy's superintendent, requesting an urgent meeting the following afternoon regarding a matter of significant concern to the school's future. What? No. One at Westmont Academy realized as they went about their evening routines was that Robert Parker, known in their community simply as a successful organic farmer, was about to reveal his other identity, Robert Parker Whitmore, the intensely private founder of Whitmore Educational Foundation, whose innovative funding approach had transformed hundreds of schools nationwide and whose personal fortune placed him among the top educational philanthropists in the country. And he was about to teach Dr. Victoria Montgomery a lesson in misjudging, appearances that neither she nor Westmont Academy would ever forget. The following morning at Westmont Academy began with the usual procession of luxury vehicles dropping students at the entrance. Range Rovers, Mercedes sedans, and the occasional Ferrari, driven by seniors with indulgent parents. Faculty members arrived earlier, parking their more modest vehicles in the designated staff lot behind the Performing Arts building. Dr. Victoria Montgomery pulled into her reserved space, a small privilege of her department head status, and gathered her materials for the day. She had spent the previous evening meticulously grading essays from her senior advanced placement students, leaving detailed comments that she believed separated true educators from mere teachers. The unmistakable sound of helicopter rotors overhead momentarily distracted her, unusual for the quiet suburb of Lakeshire. Inside the main building, the administrative wing buzzed with unexpected activity. The superintendent's secretary was frantically rearranging his schedule, while the director of development paced outside his office, clutching a portfolio and checking her phone repeatedly. "What's happening?" Dr. Montgomery asked, pausing at the administrative desk to collect her mail. "Mr. Harrington has an unexpected visitor," the secretary replied, lowering her voice. "Very important, apparently. Security just called to say a helicopter landed on the athletic field." "A helicopter?" Dr. Montgomery raised an eyebrow. "How dramatic. One of our donors showing off, no doubt." She continued to her classroom, dismissing the commotion as irrelevant to her academic domain. Her morning classes proceeded as planned. Denied a discussion of Shakespearean sonnets with her seniors and an introduction to rhetorical analysis with her juniors. By third period, however, an unusual tension had spread throughout the faculty. During her planning period, the department chair for mathematics, Dr. Richard Collins, appeared at her door with an expression of barely contained excitement. "Have you heard?" he asked, slipping into her classroom and closing the door. "About the helicopter." "Hardly academic news, Richard," she replied, not looking up from her grading. "It's not just any helicopter, Victoria. It's Robert Parker Whitmore." This caught her attention. The Whitmore Educational Foundation was legendary in academic circles, known for transformative grants that had revolutionized STEM education nationwide. Its founder was famously reclusive, rarely making public appearances and never giving interviews. "Parker Whitmore is here, at Westmont?" she asked, setting down her pen. "Why would he visit us? We haven't even applied for a Whitmore grant." "No one knows," Collins replied. "But he's been closeted with Harrington and the board chair for over an hour. Security is going crazy. He brought a team of people who are all over the campus." Before Dr. Montgomery could respond, her classroom phone rang. The superintendent's secretary informed her that her attendance was requested in the conference room immediately. "Me, specifically?" she asked, confused. "Yes, Dr. Montgomery. Mr. Harrington was very clear that you should come right away." As she made her way to the administrative wing, Dr. Montgomery mentally reviewed potential reasons for this summons. Perhaps Parker Whitmore was considering Westmont for a major grant and wanted to speak with department heads. If so, this could be a significant opportunity for the English department. New technology, visiting authors, perhaps even endowed positions. She straightened her blazer and touched her hair before entering the conference room, preparing to present herself as the distinguished educator she considered herself to be. The scene that greeted her was unexpected. Superintendent Harrington sat at the conference table, looking unusually tense. Beside him was the board chair, Eleanor Richardson, whose family had helped found Westmont a century earlier. Across from them sat a man Dr. Montgomery didn't recognize, casually but expensively dressed, with the weathered complexion of someone who spent considerable time outdoors. "Dr. Montgomery, thank you for joining us," Harrington said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar strain. "This is Mr. Robert Parker Whitmore." The name registered immediately, but something else caught in Dr. Montgomery's mind. Parker. Surely. A coincidence. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Parker Whitmore," she said, extending her hand. "Your foundation's work in educational innovation is extraordinary." "Parker is fine," he replied, his handshake firm but brief. "Please have a seat, Dr. Montgomery." As she sat, Dr. Montgomery noticed a familiar folder on the table. It contained her class roster and student evaluations. "Mr. Parker has brought some concerns to our attention," Superintendent Harrington began carefully, "regarding a new student in your AP Literature class." "Concerns?" Dr. Montgomery echoed, professional smile firmly in place. "I'm not sure I understand." "Perhaps I should be direct," Robert said, his tone conversational, but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "I'm here about my daughter, Olivia Parker, and the way you humiliated her in your classroom yesterday." The revelation hit Dr. Montgomery like a physical force. Olivia Parker, the farm girl transfer student, was Robert Parker Whitmore's daughter? It seemed impossible. The family lived on an actual working farm in Meadowbrook. They drove pickup trucks and sold organic produce at the farmer's market. "There must be some misunderstanding," she managed, her mind racing to recall exactly what she had said in class. "I hold all my students to high academic standards, Mr. Parker. It's how we maintain Westmont's reputation for excellence." "Let me be specific," Robert replied, opening a notebook where he had apparently recorded his daughter's account in detail. "You called on Olivia without warning on her first day, dismissed her thoughtful analysis as elementary, invited another student to provide what you called a more nuanced perspective, and later suggested she drop to a standard-level course because her rural education hadn't properly prepared her." Each point landed with precision, making Dr. Montgomery increasingly uncomfortable. "I may have suggested that the AP track is challenging for students without certain educational backgrounds, but this was out of concern for Olivia's success." "And what exactly do you know about my daughter's educational background, Dr. Montgomery?" Robert asked, his calm demeanor somehow more unsettling than anger would have been. "Well, she transferred from Meadowbrook High School, which is—" She hesitated, aware of the dangerous territory. "Which is what exactly?" Robert prompted. "A public rural school," she finished, trying to sound neutral. "And that automatically makes her intellectually inferior to Westmont students?" Despite her perfect test scores and writing samples that the admissions committee described as exceptional. "Of course not," Dr. Montgomery backpedaled, "but there are cultural contexts and educational experiences that—" "That what?" Robert interrupted. "That only come from wealth and privilege. Is that Westmont's official position on education, Superintendent Harrington?" The superintendent shifted uncomfortably. "Absolutely not, Mr. Parker. Westmont values diversity of thought and background. We're deeply concerned by what you've shared today." "As you should be," Robert replied, "especially in light of the pattern my team has uncovered." He placed a document on the table, a detailed analysis of Dr. Montgomery's grading patterns over the past 5 years, showing a clear statistical bias against students from public schools, particularly those from rural or lower-income areas. "Where did you get this information?" Dr. Montgomery asked, shocked by both the existence of such an analysis and its damning conclusions. "Data analytics is something of a specialty for my foundation," Robert explained. "We've developed tools to identify educational bias as part of our grant evaluation process. When Olivia told me about her experience, I had my team run an analysis of Westmont's accessible academic records." He turned to Superintendent Harrington. "The pattern extends beyond Dr. Montgomery, though hers is the most pronounced. There appears to be a systemic bias in how transfer students from certain backgrounds are evaluated across multiple departments." The room fell silent as the implications settled. This was no longer about a single teacher's treatment of one student, but about institutional patterns that had gone unrecognized and unchallenged. Eleanor Richardson, the board chair who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Parker?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Robert replied calmly. "I'm stating facts supported by data. What happens next depends on how Westmont chooses to respond." Dr. Montgomery felt a creeping sense of dread. Her carefully constructed professional reputation, built on academic credentials, publishing history, and the success of her hand-selected students, was suddenly at risk. "If I've unintentionally shown bias in my teaching, I'm certainly open to addressing it," she offered, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Perhaps a conversation with Olivia would—" "My daughter doesn't know I'm here," Robert interrupted. "And she would be mortified if she knew. Olivia believes in earning respect through her work, not through her father's intervention." He turned back to Harrington and Richardson. "Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. The Whitmore Foundation has been developing a new initiative focused on identifying and addressing unconscious bias in elite educational institutions. We're selecting 3 schools nationwide as pilot sites for a comprehensive program that includes faculty training, curriculum review, and admission process reforms." The subtle shift in the room was palpable. What had begun as a confrontation over a teacher's behavior was transforming into something that sounded like an opportunity. "Westmont wasn't originally on our consideration list," Robert continued. "But my daughter's experience has made me wonder if you might be an ideal candidate. Institutions that recognize and address their blind spots often become stronger for it." Superintendent Harrington leaned forward eagerly. "We would be honored to be considered, Mr. Parker. Westmont has always strived to be at the forefront of educational excellence. Excellence should be accessible to all students with the ability and determination to achieve it," Robert replied. "Not just those from certain zip codes or family backgrounds." He produced a folder containing what appeared to be a detailed proposal. This outlines the Whitmore Inclusive Excellence Initiative. It includes a $5 million implementation grant for each participating school, comprehensive faculty development programs, and scholarship funding for high-achieving students from underrepresented backgrounds. The figure caused Eleanor Richardson's eyebrows to rise. For a private school like Westmont, constantly fundraising to maintain competitive facilities and programs, $5 million was transformative. "There are conditions, of course," Robert continued. "Participating schools must commit to data-driven assessment of current practices, transparent implementation of recommended changes, and ongoing evaluation of progress." He looked directly at Dr. Montgomery. "And key faculty members would need to participate actively in the process, particularly those in departments where bias patterns have been identified." The implication was clear. Dr. Montgomery would be required to confront her own biases and change her teaching practices under scrutiny. The thought made her deeply uncomfortable, yet the alternative seemed professionally untenable. I would, of course, be willing to participate in any professional development the school deems appropriate, she said carefully. Excellent, Robert replied with a slight smile that suggested he recognized the calculation behind her sudden cooperation. Because I'm considering making you the faculty liaison for the entire program. The suggestion was so unexpected that Dr. Montgomery couldn't hide her shock. Me? But Who better? Robert asked. You have the academic credentials to lend credibility to the program, and you'd have the most powerful motivation to ensure its success. The elegance of this solution, or punishment, depending on one's perspective, wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Dr. Montgomery would become responsible for implementing reforms to address the very biases she had perpetuated, placing her own reputation directly on the line. I'm not sure, she began. I think it's an excellent suggestion, Superintendent Harrington interrupted, clearly seeing the path towards securing the grant. Dr. Montgomery's leadership would demonstrate our institutional commitment to addressing these issues head-on. Trapped by professional courtesy and the superintendent's enthusiasm, Dr. Montgomery found herself nodding in agreement. There's one more thing, Robert said, turning back to the superintendent and board chair. My daughter's situation. Of course, Harrington responded quickly. We can certainly arrange for her to transfer to another AP literature section. That won't be necessary, Robert replied. Olivia doesn't know about my visit, and I'd prefer to keep it that way. She wants to succeed on her own merits, not through parental intervention. He fixed Dr. Montgomery with a steady gaze. What I expect is fair treatment based on her work, not her background. She stays in your class, Dr. Montgomery, but she receives the same respect and consideration as any other student. Absolutely, Dr. Montgomery agreed, recognizing both the professional necessity and the ethical obligation. Excellent, Robert said, rising from his seat. My team will be in touch about next steps for the initiative. We'll need to schedule a comprehensive assessment within the next 2 weeks. As the meeting concluded and handshakes were exchanged, Dr. Montgomery noticed how differently Harrington and Richardson treated Robert now, with the deference reserved for major donors and influential board members. Yet Robert's manner remained unchanged, neither embracing nor rejecting their newfound respect. In the hallway outside, Dr. Montgomery found herself walking alongside Robert as he prepared to leave. Curiosity overcame her professional caution. May I ask you something, Mr. Parker? She ventured. Of course. Why the secrecy? Why live as a farmer when you're clearly... She gestured vaguely, unable to find a delicate way to reference his wealth and influence. Robert considered the question thoughtfully. My wife and I made that decision when Olivia was young. We wanted her to develop a strong work ethic and genuine connections, not relationships influenced by wealth or status. He paused, then added, The farm isn't a pretense, Dr. Montgomery. It's a successful business that produces organic crops for restaurants across 3 states. The fact that I have other business interests doesn't make that work any less real or valuable. The subtle rebuke in his words wasn't lost on her. Before she could respond, they were approached by Madison Chen, Olivia's new friend, who was coming from the science lab carrying a research project. Mr. Parker, Madison exclaimed with genuine warmth. I didn't know you were visiting today. Is Olivia okay? Hello, Madison, Robert replied with easy familiarity that surprised Dr. Montgomery. Just handling some foundation business. And yes, Olivia's fine. Madison smiled and continued on her way, leaving Dr. Montgomery puzzled. You know Madison Chen. Her parents' medical research company partners with one of my foundation's healthcare initiatives, Robert explained. The Chen family are remarkable people, brilliant scientific minds and genuine humanity. Madison and Olivia became friends immediately when they met at a foundation event last year. This revelation shifted something in Dr. Montgomery's understanding. So Olivia's friendship with Madison isn't coincidental. On the contrary, it's entirely genuine, Robert corrected her. They share intellectual curiosity and mutual respect. Madison doesn't care that Olivia lives on a farm, and Olivia doesn't care that Madison's parents run a billion-dollar company. He fixed Dr. Montgomery with a pointed look. Young people often see past the superficial markers of status that adults use to categorize and judge. Perhaps that's something education should nurture rather than undermine. With that observation, he excused himself to take a call, leaving Dr. Montgomery in the hallway with uncomfortable new perspectives to consider. Meanwhile, entirely unaware of her father's visit, Olivia was excelling in her calculus class, where the teacher had given her an approving nod for correctly solving a complex differential equation. The morning had been better than her first day. Several students had introduced themselves after seeing her with Madison, whose popularity transcended Westmont's usual social barriers due to her genuine kindness and academic brilliance. Olivia had thrown herself into her classes with renewed determination after her conversation with her father. If Dr. Montgomery and others judged her by her background rather than her abilities, she would simply have to demonstrate those abilities so convincingly that they couldn't be ignored. In the faculty lounge during lunch, Dr. Montgomery sat alone, picking at a salad while contemplating the morning's revelations. Her colleagues had noticed her uncharacteristic quietness, but attributed it to the mysterious high-profile visitor rather than personal discomfort. The mathematics chair, Dr. Collins, joined her with obvious curiosity. So, what was the great Robert Parker Whitmore doing at Westmont? Everyone's speculating. Dr. Montgomery considered her response carefully. The foundation is considering Westmont for a new educational initiative, she said, sharing the positive aspect while omitting the uncomfortable catalyst. Really? Collins leaned forward eagerly. What kind of initiative? Something STEM-focused? Actually, it's about inclusive excellence, she replied, the phrase from Robert's proposal coming to her lips naturally, despite her initial resistance to its implications. Ensuring that we recognize and nurture talent regardless of background. Interesting, Collins mused. Not typically what the Whitmore Foundation is known for. Their STEM initiatives are legendary, but this sounds more sociological. It's a new direction for them, Dr. Montgomery acknowledged, and potentially a significant opportunity for Westmont. What she didn't say, couldn't bring herself to articulate yet, was how the morning's confrontation had begun to unsettle foundations she had considered immovable. Education had always been her domain of certainty, where credentials and pedigree served as reliable indicators of potential and worth. The statistical evidence of her own bias had been particularly disturbing, challenging her self-perception as a fair and objective educator. As the day continued, Dr. Montgomery found herself observing Olivia Parker with new awareness during afternoon AP literature. The girl participated thoughtfully in their discussion of Emily Dickinson, offering an interpretation that connected the poet's isolation to her creative freedom in a way Dr. Montgomery hadn't previously considered. That's a perceptive analysis, Olivia, she acknowledged, making a conscious effort to validate the insight. Dickinson's remove from society potentially enabled the unconventional structures we see in her work. Though the brief flash of surprise and then cautious pleasure on Olivia's face made Dr. Montgomery uncomfortably aware of how her previous dismissal had affected the student. Had she been so transparently biased that simple professional courtesy now registered as unexpected generosity? After class, several students lingered to discuss the reading assignment, including Olivia and Harrison Wells, the banking executive's son whom Dr. Montgomery had previously praised at Olivia's expense. "I actually thought what you said about Gatsby yesterday was really good," Harrison told Olivia as they packed up their books. "My dad talks about that stuff all the time, how people think money will solve everything, but it just creates different problems." "Thanks," Olivia replied with a genuine smile. "On the farm, we see both sides. We need profits to survive, but the work itself has to matter beyond money." Their conversation continued as they left the classroom, leaving Dr. Montgomery to reflect on how quickly genuine intellectual exchange could develop when artificial barriers were removed. By the end of the school day, news of the helicopter visitor had spread throughout Westmont, though most speculation focused on a potential major donation rather than the actual purpose of Robert's visit. Dr. Montgomery finished her afternoon with a growing sense of unease about how easily she had allowed assumptions about background to influence her assessment of intellectual ability, not just with Olivia, but potentially with countless students throughout her career. Back at Meadowbrook Farm, Olivia arrived home to find her father in the field office, apparently reviewing crop rotation plans with their farm manager. Nothing in his manner suggested he had done anything unusual that day, certainly not confronting her teacher or offering Westmont Academy a multi-million-dollar grant. "How was school today?" he asked casually as she dropped her backpack on a chair. "Better," Olivia admitted. "Dr. Montgomery actually complimented my analysis in class, and I met more people who seem pretty nice beyond just Madison." "That's good to hear," Robert replied with a slight smile. "Sometimes people just need time to recognize quality." "Maybe," Olivia said, not entirely convinced. "Or maybe Madison talking to me made me socially acceptable. Status by association." Robert looked up from his papers, studying his daughter thoughtfully. "And how would you feel about that?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "I'd rather be valued for my own merits. But I get how the world works. People use shortcuts to decide who's worth their time." "And those shortcuts are often wrong," Robert observed. "They lead people to miss talent and character right in front of them, because it doesn't come in the package they expect." He returned to his paperwork with a casual air that masked the morning's confrontation. "By the way, there might be some changes coming to Westmont soon, educational initiatives, new programs. You might hear people talking about it." "Really?" Olivia asked, curious. "Like what?" "Professional development, curriculum reviews, that sort of thing," Robert replied vaguely. "Schools are always evolving." What Robert didn't mention was that his team was already coordinating with Westmont's administration to begin the comprehensive assessment that would form the foundation of the Inclusive Excellence Initiative. Or that Dr. Victoria Montgomery would soon find herself leading workshops on recognizing and addressing unconscious bias in educational settings, workshops designed by the very foundation created by the father of the student she had dismissed as intellectually unprepared. Instead, he simply smiled at his daughter and asked about her calculus homework, maintaining the careful separation between their family life and his professional influence that had protected Olivia's development for 17 years. But as changes began to unfold at Westmont Academy in the coming weeks, that separation would become increasingly difficult to maintain, especially as Olivia's exceptional abilities became impossible for anyone to ignore, forcing Dr. Montgomery and others to confront how thoroughly they had misjudged the farmer's daughter, whose quiet intelligence would eventually transform not just Westmont, but educational approaches across the country. The initial changes at Westmont Academy were subtle but unmistakable. Within a week of Robert Parker Whitmore's visit, faculty members received a schedule of upcoming professional development sessions focused on recognizing excellence across diverse backgrounds. The email from Superintendent Harrington emphasized that these workshops would be led by specialists from the Whitmore Educational Foundation and coordinated by their own Dr. Victoria Montgomery. For most teachers, this simply appeared to be another educational initiative, perhaps connected to the mysterious visitor whose helicopter had caused such speculation. For Dr. Montgomery, it represented a profound personal and professional challenge that kept her awake at night, reviewing her teaching philosophy and practices with increasing discomfort. In her 15 years at Westmont, she had built her reputation on academic rigor and maintaining standards. Now, faced with statistical evidence of her own bias, she was forced to confront whether those standards had been genuinely about academic excellence or unconsciously designed to favor students who fit a particular mold of background and experience. On a crisp autumn morning 3 weeks after Robert's visit, Westmont's faculty gathered in the conference center for the first Whitmore Initiative workshop. Dr. Montgomery stood at the entrance, greeting colleagues with a professional smile that masked her inner turmoil. As faculty liaison for the initiative, she would be introducing Dr. Elena Ramirez, the Whitmore Foundation's Director of Educational Equity. "Nervous?" asked Richard Collins, the mathematics chair, pausing beside her. "Not at all," she replied automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, yes. This program represents a significant shift in how we think about student potential and achievement." Collins nodded thoughtfully. "I've been reviewing the data they sent over. The correlation between socioeconomic background and teacher expectations is uncomfortable. Makes you wonder how many brilliant minds we've overlooked because they didn't fit our preconceptions." His candor surprised her. "You're not resistant to these changes?" "Mathematics is about patterns, Victoria," he replied. "Simply, when the data reveals a pattern of bias, ignoring it would be intellectually dishonest." As the session began, Dr. Montgomery introduced Dr. Ramirez with carefully prepared remarks acknowledging Westmont's commitment to educational excellence and openness to evolving practices. What she couldn't say, was how the catalyst for this initiative had been her own humiliation of a student she had misjudged. Dr. Ramirez, a warm, articulate woman with decades of experience in educational psychology, began not with accusations but with research, presenting study after study, showing how teacher expectations directly influence student performance across all socioeconomic groups. "When we expect less from certain students based on their background," she explained, showing brain imaging studies, "we actually create neurological barriers to their achievement. It's called stereotype threat, and it impacts even the most capable students when they internalize our limited expectations." Throughout the presentation, Dr. Montgomery found herself increasingly engaged despite her initial resistance. The scientific evidence was compelling, but more affecting were the case studies of brilliant students whose potential had been overlooked because they didn't match the expected profile of excellence. One case particularly resonated: a student from an agricultural community whose innovative approach to environmental science had been dismissed by elite university professors until the work gained international recognition through a different channel. The parallels to Olivia's situation were unmistakable. During the workshop exercises, faculty members were asked to examine anonymized student work without demographic information and rate its quality. Then they were given fabricated background details about each student and asked to rate the work again. The subtle but measurable shifts in their evaluations created a powerful moment of collective self-awareness. "This isn't about blame," Dr. Ramirez emphasized as faculty members processed their discomfort. "We all absorb cultural messages about where excellence comes from. The question is whether we're willing to recognize and correct these unconscious patterns when shown they exist." For Dr. Montgomery, The workshop triggered a cascade of memories. Students whose work she had perhaps undervalued because they lacked the proper educational pedigree, others whose mediocre analyses she had praised because they came from prestigious backgrounds or used the expected academic language. During the lunch break, she found herself sitting with Madison Chen, who was helping serve refreshments as part of her student council duties. "The workshop seems intense," Madison observed, refilling water pitchers. "Teachers keep coming out, looking like they've had existential crises." Dr. Montgomery smiled despite herself. "It's challenging to confront potential flaws in how you've practiced your profession for decades." Madison nodded thoughtfully. "My mom says the hardest scientific breakthroughs come when you have to admit your initial hypothesis was wrong. That the real test of a scientist isn't being right, but being willing to recognize when you're not." "Wise perspective," Dr. Montgomery acknowledged, struck by the maturity in the observation. "She'd like Olivia," Madison continued casually. "They both think about problems differently than most people. Olivia was helping me with my ecology project yesterday and made connections between soil microbiomes and human health that never occurred to me, even though my parents literally run a medical research company." The comment lingered with Dr. Montgomery as the workshop resumed. Was it possible that rural backgrounds might actually provide unique perspectives valuable to academic discourse rather than limitations to be overcome? Meanwhile, across campus, Olivia was thriving in ways she hadn't expected. After the initial adjustment period, she found that many Westmont students were genuinely interested in her different experiences and perspectives. Her background, which Dr. Montgomery had viewed as a disadvantage, became a source of fascination to classmates who had never grown their own food or understood agricultural ecosystems beyond textbook descriptions. In her AP Environmental Science class, Olivia's practical knowledge of sustainable farming practices earned her the respect of both her teacher and peers. When theoretical discussions of ecosystem management arose, she could offer concrete examples, from Meadowbrook Farm's integrated pest management system or water conservation techniques. The textbook describes crop rotation as primarily about soil nutrients, Olivia explained during a class presentation. But at our farm, we've found it's equally important for disrupting pest life cycles and promoting beneficial insect populations. It's a holistic approach that impacts everything from soil microbiology to bird migrations through our property. Her teacher, Dr. Patel, was visibly impressed. This is exactly the kind of real-world application that brings the science alive. Have you considered documenting these observations for your AP research project? The suggestion sparked an idea that would eventually become central to Olivia's academic path, though she didn't realize its significance yet. After class, Dr. Patel asked her to stay behind briefly. "Your understanding of agricultural ecosystems is exceptional, Olivia," he said. "Would you be interested in joining our environmental science competition team? The regional challenge this year focuses on sustainable food systems." "Really?" Olivia was surprised by the invitation. "I'd love to, but I don't have much experience with academic competitions." "But you have experience with the actual subject matter," Dr. Patel pointed out. "And that's infinitely more valuable than knowing competition formats, which you can learn quickly." This validation of her practical knowledge as academically valuable boosted Olivia's confidence in ways that transcended any single class or project. She began to recognize that her background wasn't something to overcome, but rather a unique lens that allowed her to see connections others missed. At the same time, subtle changes were occurring in Dr. Montgomery's AP Literature class. While not drawing attention to her shifted approach, she began deliberately structuring discussions to draw out diverse perspectives on literary works. When studying The Grapes of Wrath, she specifically invited Olivia's insights on Steinbeck's portrayal of agricultural displacement during the Dust Bowl. There's a passage where Steinbeck describes the farmers' connection to their land, Olivia noted, how it becomes part of their identity. That's still true today. When you work the same soil your grandparents did, there's a relationship that goes beyond economics. It's why sustainable practices matter so much to family farms. We're preserving something that's part of who we are, not just a business asset. The class fell silent, struck by the personal resonance in her analysis. Dr. Montgomery found herself nodding, genuinely appreciative of the insight. That's a perspective Steinbeck would have valued, she acknowledged. It adds dimension to our understanding of what these characters lost beyond their livelihoods. After class, Harrison Wells approached Olivia. Your comment about land being part of identity, that made the book make sense in a way it didn't before. My family's been in banking for generations, and there's something similar there. It's not just a job, it's a continuity. Exactly, Olivia agreed, pleased that he'd understood. Different worlds, but similar connections to legacy and responsibility. These conversations began happening more frequently as Westmont's culture subtly shifted under the influence of the Whitmore Initiative. Faculty members, becoming more conscious of their implicit biases, started recognizing and nurturing excellence in unexpected places. Students, taking cues from their teachers, became more open to perspectives from different backgrounds. At Meadowbrook Farm, Robert noticed the change in his daughter's demeanor as October progressed. The tension she had carried home after those first difficult days had been replaced by growing confidence and enthusiasm for her classes. She spoke about group projects, classroom discussions, and even Dr. Montgomery's literature analyses with genuine engagement. Things have really turned around at Westmont, he observed one evening as they worked together in the greenhouse, starting seedlings for the winter crop rotation. You seem to be finding your place there. Olivia nodded, carefully transferring delicate sprouts to larger containers. It's different than I expected. There was this wall at first, like people had already decided who I was before knowing me, but something changed. Now it feels like being from a farm actually makes me more interesting to them, not less. Robert smiled, hiding his satisfaction at the effectiveness of the initiative he had set in motion. Sometimes people just need time to see past their initial assumptions. Maybe, Olivia agreed thoughtfully. Or maybe something bigger is happening at Westmont. There's all these new programs and discussions about different perspectives being valuable. Dr. Montgomery even asked me to help lead a seminar on agricultural themes in American literature. That sounds like a meaningful opportunity, Robert replied, careful to mask his knowledge of the institutional changes his intervention had triggered. How do you feel about taking on that role? Olivia considered the question as she worked, her hands moving with practiced efficiency among the seedlings. It's a little intimidating, but also validating, like my background is. An asset, not something to overcome. That's exactly what it should be, Robert affirmed. Different experiences create different kinds of intelligence and insight. True education recognizes and values that diversity rather than trying to eliminate it. As they continued working, Olivia mentioned another development. The environmental science competition team was visiting Meadowbrook Farm that weekend to learn about their sustainable agricultural practices firsthand. Dr. Patel asked if you would give them a tour of the integrated pest management system and water conservation infrastructure, she explained. He says it's a perfect real-world application of the principles they're studying. Robert agreed readily, pleased that Olivia's two worlds were beginning to connect in meaningful ways. What he didn't reveal was that Dr. Patel's request had come shortly after attending one of the Whitmore Initiative workshops on recognizing community resources and non-traditional expertise. The weekend farm visit proved transformative for several Westmont students who had never experienced agricultural settings beyond carefully manicured estates. Under Robert's guidance, they explored sophisticated irrigation systems that minimized water usage, examined beneficial insect habitats integrated throughout the property, and learned how soil composition was regularly tested and amended to maximize natural fertility without chemical dependence. This is more advanced than what we're learning in AP Environmental Science, admitted Tyler Santos, a student from one of Lakeshire's wealthiest families. I thought farming was just, planting and harvesting. Modern, sustainable agriculture is applied ecology, chemistry, and biology, Robert explained, as they examined compost systems that carefully balanced carbon and nitrogen inputs. It's about managing complex biological systems rather than fighting against them. Dr. Patel, accompanying the group, was equally impressed. The integration of scientific principles here is remarkable, Mr. Parker. Would you consider allowing our students to establish ongoing research projects using your farm data? The longitudinal information you've collected on soil health and biodiversity would make exceptional case studies. I'd be happy to, Robert agreed, with one condition: that the students spend time actually working in these systems, not just analyzing the data. True understanding comes from direct experience. The visit concluded with an unexpected bonus. Emma, Olivia's younger sister, had prepared a farm-to-table lunch using ingredients harvested that morning, demonstrating the culinary endpoint of sustainable agricultural practices. As Westmont students savored vegetables with flavor profiles they'd never experienced in store-bought produce, conversations flowed about food systems, environmental impacts, and the disconnection most people feel from their food sources. On Monday morning, Dr. Montgomery was surprised to find her faculty mailbox containing a handwritten note from Madison Chen. Dr. Montgomery, I went to Olivia's farm this weekend with the environmental science team. Thought you might be interested in these connections to the literature we're studying. The Parker family's approach to land stewardship reminds me of Wendell Berry's agrarian essays we discussed last week. They're living his philosophy about humans' relationship with natural systems, maybe a potential field trip for AP Lit. Madison. The suggestion was thoughtful and academically sound, connecting literary analysis with real-world applications. In a way that would enhance understanding of the texts, Dr. Montgomery found herself genuinely considering the possibility, something that would have seemed inconceivable just weeks earlier. As she prepared for her morning classes, Dr. Montgomery reflected on how significantly her perspective had shifted. The professional development sessions had opened her eyes to patterns in her teaching she had never recognized. But it was the practical evidence of Olivia's intellect and unique contributions that had truly transformed her thinking. Later that week, Westmont's administration announced an expanded version of the Whitmore Initiative, a formal partnership that would bring substantial resources to the school, including a $5 million grant for programs focused on identifying and nurturing excellence across diverse backgrounds. The announcement created excitement throughout the campus, though few understood the true catalyst for this remarkable opportunity. In the faculty lounge, speculation ran rampant about why Westmont had been selected. I heard the Whitmore Foundation rarely partners with private schools, remarked the history department chair. They usually focus on public education in underserved areas. Maybe they're expanding their model, suggested another teacher, using well-resourced schools to develop programs that can be implemented more broadly. Dr. Montgomery, privy to the actual circumstances, remained silent during these discussions. The truth that Robert Parker Whitmore had chosen Westmont specifically because his daughter had been humiliated there would have been professionally devastating for her. If revealed, Instead, she channeled her energy into ensuring the initiative's success, recognizing it as both personal redemption and professional growth. The following day, students gathered in the auditorium for a special assembly announcing the Whitmore partnership. Superintendent Harrington spoke with enthusiasm about the opportunities it would bring, from expanded scholarship programs to innovative curriculum development. Olivia, sitting beside Madison in the middle of the auditorium, listened with interest, but no recognition of her father's connection to the foundation. "This sounds amazing," she whispered to Madison. "But why Westmont? We're already so well-resourced compared to public schools." Madison shrugged, though her expression suggested she might know more than she was saying. Maybe they want to create a model that challenges assumptions about where excellence comes from. If even privileged schools need to reconsider how they identify and nurture talent, that sends a powerful message. As the assembly concluded, Superintendent Harrington made a final announcement that caused murmurs of surprise throughout the auditorium. To launch this partnership properly, we'll be hosting a special symposium next month, featuring distinguished speakers on educational equity. We're honored that Robert Parker Whitmore, founder of the Whitmore Foundation, will deliver the keynote address on reconceptualizing excellence in education. Olivia froze, her expression shifting from interest to shock. "Did he say Parker Whitmore?" Madison squeezed her friend's hand supportively. "I was wondering when you'd find out. Your dad's kind of a big deal in educational philanthropy." "But my dad is a farmer," Olivia said weakly, though even as she spoke, puzzle pieces were falling into place. The sophisticated technology integrated throughout their simple farm operation. The international business, calls her father occasionally, took in his office, his extensive knowledge across multiple fields that had always seemed unusual for someone she'd thought was just an organic farmer. "He's both," Madison replied gently. "My parents have worked with the Whitmore Foundation on several initiatives. They mentioned the connection when I first told them about my new friend Olivia Parker." "You knew all this time?" Olivia felt a complex mix of confusion and betrayal. "Why didn't you say anything?" "It wasn't my secret to share," Madison explained, "and I figured your dad must have reasons for keeping his foundation work separate from your life here." As students filed out of the auditorium, Olivia remained seated, processing this revelation. Dr. Montgomery, noticing her distress, approached cautiously. "Olivia, are you all right?" "Did you know?" Olivia asked directly, looking up at her. "Teacher." "About my father?" Dr. Montgomery hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. "I became aware of your father's work with the foundation recently, yes. It wasn't my place to discuss it with you. So when you started treating me differently in class, with actual respect, was it because of who my father is?" The question cut to the heart of Olivia's sudden insecurity. Had her recent success at Westmont been earned or merely granted because of her father's influence? Dr. Montgomery considered her response carefully, recognizing the critical importance of this moment for her students' self-perception. "Your father's identity made me examine my assumptions, Olivia. But your work stands on its own merits. The insights you've contributed to our discussions have genuinely enhanced the class's understanding of the literature." She paused, then added with unexpected honesty, "In fact, knowing about your background has helped me recognize how limited my previous conception of academic excellence has been. That's on me, not you." This candid acknowledgement, coming from the teacher who had initially dismissed her, offered Olivia a measure of reassurance. Still, she left the auditorium with a determination to confront her father about the identity he had kept hidden from her throughout her life. That evening at Meadowbrook Farm, the conversation Olivia had been rehearsing all day began the moment she found her father in his office. "Were you ever going to tell me?" she asked from the doorway, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Or was I just going to learn about Robert Parker Whitmore from a school assembly? Robert looked up from his computer, his expression a complex mix of concern and resignation. I was planning to have this conversation after you'd established yourself at Westmont on your own terms. So all this time, my whole life, you've been living this double identity. Olivia entered the office fully now, noticing details she had somehow overlooked before. The sophisticated technology, the multiple monitors displaying complex data, the subtle signs of an operation far larger than a single-family farm. Not a double identity, Robert corrected gently, just different facets of the same person. The farm is real, Olivia. The work we do here matters. It's just not the only work I do. But why hide it from me? Did you think I couldn't handle knowing my father runs a major educational foundation? Robert gestured for her to sit, recognizing this conversation required his full attention. Your mother and I made this decision when you were very young. We wanted you to develop your own identity, your own work ethic and values, without the distorting influence of wealth or status. So you lied to me, Olivia concluded flatly. We simplified, Robert countered. We focused on the aspects of our lives that we believed would help you develop into the person you've become. Someone who values substance over appearance, who understands that meaningful work isn't about status, but about contribution. Olivia absorbed this, her anger gradually giving way to confusion. But all those times I worried about college tuition, about scholarship applications, those concerns weren't artificial, Robert assured her. The scholarships you've earned are based entirely on your merits. We could have paid for any college, yes, but would you have worked as hard, developed the same skills and resilience if you'd known that? The question gave Olivia pause. Her academic achievements had always been a source of genuine pride, precisely because she believed she was overcoming limitations that many of her peers didn't face. What about Westmont? She asked, a new suspicion forming. Did you arrange my scholarship there? Is that why things suddenly improved after those first difficult weeks? Robert shook his head. Your Westmont scholarship was earned entirely on your academic merits. But he hesitated, then decided complete honesty was necessary. I did visit the school after you told me about your experience in Dr. Montgomery's class. You went to Westmont? Olivia was stunned. Without telling me? I went as Robert Parker Whitmore, yes. I met with the administration about concerning patterns in how they evaluated students from non-traditional backgrounds. That meeting led to the initiative they announced today. The pieces clicked into place. The subtle shifts in how teachers treated her, the new emphasis on diverse perspectives, even Dr. Montgomery's transformed approach to class discussions. So everything that's happened, it's all been because of your influence, not because I earned it, Olivia concluded. Disappointment evident in her voice. No, Robert said firmly. The opportunity for Westmont to recognize talent in new ways came through my intervention, yes. But the talent they recognized was always yours, Olivia. I didn't enhance your abilities or write your papers or contribute your insights in class discussions. I simply helped remove barriers that were preventing fair evaluation of what was already there. This distinction was crucial, though Olivia was still processing its implications. And now everyone will know, I'm not just Olivia Parker from Meadowbrook Farm. I'm the Whitmore Foundation heiress whose father bought a better attitude from her teachers. That's not how this will play out, Robert assured her. The Whitmore Initiative is about institutional change, not individual accommodation. And how you handle this revelation is entirely your choice. What do you mean? You can embrace The connection publicly, use it to further causes you believe in. You can acknowledge it, but keep it separate from your personal identity. Or you can continue focusing on your studies while I manage the foundation work. There's no rule book for this situation, Olivia. As their conversation continued into the evening, Emma joined them, revealing that she had discovered their father's identity the previous year, but had kept his confidence when asked. The family discussion expanded to include larger questions about privilege, responsibility, and authenticity that would shape not just Olivia's understanding of her father, but her own evolving identity. What no one at Meadowbrook Farm could anticipate that night was how Olivia's unique position, straddling worlds of agricultural practice and educational philanthropy, would eventually lead her to develop innovative approaches to environmental education that would transform curricula nationwide, or how Dr. Victoria Montgomery, through her reluctant leadership of the Whitmore Initiative, would become an unexpected champion for recognizing excellence in non-traditional students. Eventually, writing a best-selling book on overcoming implicit bias in education. The private jet that had landed so dramatically at Westmont Academy had set in motion changes far beyond a single teacher's attitude or a single student's experience. Changes that would ripple through educational institutions across the country, challenging fundamental assumptions about where excellence can be found and how it should be nurtured. The news of Robert Parker Whitmore's connection to Olivia spread through Westmont Academy with the speed and force of a summer storm. By morning, students were checking their phones between classes, sharing articles about the reclusive philanthropist whose educational foundation had transformed STEM programs across the country. Several pieces featured photos of Robert at rare public appearances, his weathered farmer's appearance contrasting sharply with the corporate executives and politicians surrounding him. In the hallways, Olivia could feel the shift in how people looked at her. Curious glances, whispered conversations that stopped when she approached, and most distressingly, a sudden deference from teachers who had previously been demanding or dismissive. The authenticity she had worked so hard to establish felt threatened by this new layer of identity she hadn't chosen to reveal. "This too shall pass," Madison assured her as they walked to AP Environmental Science. "Trust me, I've dealt with this my whole life. Eventually you'll just be Olivia again, with one more facet people know about." "Easy for you to say," Olivia replied. "You've always known who your parents are and what that means. I'm still trying to reconcile the father who taught me to drive a tractor with the man who apparently influences national educational policy." Madison considered this. "Fair point, but consider this. Both versions are equally real. The skills and values you developed growing up on that farm are authentic parts of who you are, regardless of your father's other identity." Their conversation paused as they entered Dr. Patel's classroom, where the atmosphere felt charged with awareness. The environmental science competition team had been working on their project using Meadowbrook Farm's data, but now that work carried different implications. "Before we begin today's lesson," Dr. Patel announced, "I want to address something. Our research partnership with Meadowbrook Farm will continue exactly as planned, based on its exceptional sustainability practices and educational value. Mr. Parker's other professional activities don't change the scientific merit of what we're studying there." His matter-of-fact approach, focusing on the work rather than the revelation, helped settle the classroom atmosphere. Throughout the day, other teachers took similar approaches, though with varying degrees of success. Some overcompensated with excessive praise of Olivia's contributions, while others awkwardly avoided calling on her entirely. Dr. Montgomery's approach proved the most meaningful. When Olivia entered AP Literature, she braced herself for another uncomfortable navigation of her new status. Instead, Dr. Montgomery began class by distributing a new assignment. "We're starting a unit on authorial identity and narrative reliability," she explained, referencing works like To Kill a Mockingbird and Great Expectations, where narrators' perceptions evolve through confrontations with hidden truths. How do our assumptions about identity, our own and others, shape the stories we tell ourselves about the world? The topic resonated powerfully with Olivia's current situation without directly referencing it, creating intellectual space to process personal experiences through literature. It represented teaching at its finest, using academic content to illuminate human experiences while respecting student privacy. After class, Dr. Montgomery asked Olivia to stay for a moment. "I want to assure you that your standing in this class remains based entirely on your work," she said directly. "And I recognize this revelation may be as surprising to you as it was to many of us." "Thank you," Olivia replied, appreciating the acknowledgement. "It's been complicated." "Identity often is," Dr. Montgomery observed. "Literature helps us understand that complexity, how we can be multiple things simultaneously without contradiction." She hesitated, then added something unexpected. "Your father's visit to Westmont was a catalyst for important institutional changes, but the insights you've contributed to our class discussions would have been valuable regardless of who your father is. I regret that I didn't recognize that immediately." This candid acknowledgement, the closest thing to an apology Dr. Montgomery had offered for her initial treatment, provided Olivia with a measure of validation when she most needed it. While the teacher didn't explicitly apologize for her earlier bias, her recognition of its existence and impact represented significant growth. That afternoon, Superintendent Harrington called an emergency assembly to address the situation directly. Students and faculty filled the auditorium, an undercurrent of excitement running through the crowd as they anticipated further revelations about the Parker-Whitmore connection. "You've likely heard that one of our students, Olivia Parker, is the daughter of Robert Parker Whitmore, founder of the Whitmore Educational Foundation," Harrington began without preamble. "While this connection has generated considerable interest, it changes nothing about our commitment to evaluating all students based on their own merits and contributions." He continued with unexpected firmness. "At Westmont, we will not allow a student's family connections, whether to wealth, influence, or notable achievement, to define their individual academic journey. I expect every member of our community to respect Ms. Parker's privacy and focus on creating an environment where all students can excel based on their own work." The directness of this address, coupled with the clear expectation it set, helped diffuse some of the sensation surrounding the revelation. Still, as Olivia left campus that afternoon, she felt the weight of others' perceptions shifting her sense of self in ways she hadn't anticipated. At Meadowbrook Farm, she found her father in the greenhouse, working alongside their farm manager to assess seedling progress. Despite her lingering confusion about his dual identity, the sight of him in this familiar setting, hands in the soil, discussing crop rotation strategies, provided a strange comfort. "How bad was it?" he asked as she joined them, not needing to specify what it referred to. "Weird," she admitted, "like everyone suddenly sees me through this new filter that distorts everything I say or do." Robert nodded, understanding the phenomenon well. "That's why your mother and I wanted to protect you from it as long as possible. Being seen for who you truly are becomes more difficult when people think they know you based on external factors, like family connections or wealth. But now I have to figure out how to navigate it," Olivia sighed. "And I'm still trying to reconcile the two versions of you in my mind." "Not two versions," Robert corrected gently. "One person with different dimensions. The same way you're both a farmer's daughter and a gifted student, I'm both a farmer and a foundation director. Neither identity is more authentic than the other. This perspective, that seemingly contradictory aspects of identity could coexist without diminishing each other, gradually helped Olivia process her father's revelation. Over the following weeks, she developed strategies for addressing her new public identity while maintaining her sense of self. When classmates asked about the Whitmore Foundation, she redirected conversations toward the actual work it supported, rather than her father's wealth or influence. When teachers seemed inclined to give her special treatment, she politely but firmly insisted on being held to the same standards as everyone else. And when opportunities arose to meaningfully connect her two worlds, like the environmental science project using Meadowbrook Farm's sustainability data, she embraced them authentically. Meanwhile, preparations for the Whitmore Initiative Symposium continued, creating a buzz of activity throughout Westmont. The event would feature educators from across the country discussing innovative approaches to identifying and nurturing talent across diverse backgrounds. Robert was scheduled as the keynote speaker, with Dr. Montgomery serving as Westmont's faculty representative on a panel about institutional transformation. 2 days before the symposium, Dr. Montgomery requested a meeting with Olivia. They sat in the school's courtyard, away from curious ears. "I have a somewhat unusual request," Dr. Montgomery began. "The symposium panel I'm participating in will discuss how institutions can recognize excellence in unexpected places. Given your unique perspective, as both a student who experienced bias and someone who's seen both sides of the educational divide, your insights would be valuable. Would you consider joining the panel?" The invitation surprised Olivia. "You want me to speak publicly about my experience here?" "Only if you're comfortable doing so," Dr. Montgomery clarified. "And you would determine exactly what aspects of your experience to share. But authentic student voices are critical to this conversation, and yours spans contexts that few others can bridge." Olivia considered the proposal carefully. Initial discomfort at being spotlighted gave way to recognition of the potential impact her perspective might have. "If I did this, I'd want to focus on the bigger issues, not just my personal experience. How educational bias affects thousands of students without famous parents to intervene." "That's precisely why your voice would be valuable," Dr. Montgomery agreed. "You can speak to both the problem and the potential solutions in a way few others can." After consulting with her father and sister, Olivia agreed to participate. The days leading up to the symposium were filled with careful preparation, not just for her panel comments, but for navigating her first public appearance connected to her father's foundation work. The morning of the symposium arrived with perfect autumn weather, clear skies, and brilliant foliage surrounding Westmont's campus. Educational leaders from across the region filled the auditorium, along with faculty, students, and media representatives covering what had been framed as a significant new direction in private school education. Robert Parker Whitmore's keynote address set the tone for the day, though not in ways many expected. Rather than focusing on the foundation's resources or institutional partnerships, he spoke personally about the origins of his commitment to educational equity. "I grew up in a small farming community not unlike Meadowbrook," he explained, standing confidently at the podium without notes. "My high school had limited resources but dedicated teachers who recognized something in me worth nurturing. When I arrived at university on scholarship, I encountered barriers that had nothing to do with my intellectual abilities and everything to do with assumptions about where excellence can be found." He described professors who dismissed his insights because they weren't framed in expected academic language, peers who assumed his rural background indicated limited intelligence, and systems designed to reward those already privileged with educational advantages. My success came not because these barriers were removed, but because I found ways around them, he continued. The question that has driven my foundation's work is this: how many brilliant minds never get that chance? Because the barriers prove insurmountable. How much potential human contribution is lost because we've narrowly defined what excellence looks like and where it can originate? This framing, focusing on systemic waste of human potential rather than individual stories of overcoming odds, shifted the conversation from charity to necessity. Robert wasn't presenting educational equity as a moral good, though it certainly was that, but as an essential strategy for addressing complex global challenges that required diverse thinking. When we limit our conception of excellence to those who already have educational advantages, we're seeing only a fraction of the talent that exists, he concluded. The most innovative solutions often come from unexpected places, from minds trained by different experiences and challenges than those traditionally valued by elite institutions. The address received a standing ovation, setting a powerful foundation for the day's discussions. Subsequent panels explored concrete strategies for identifying talent across diverse backgrounds, restructuring evaluation systems to mitigate implicit bias, and creating institutional cultures that valued multiple forms of knowledge and experience. The final panel of the day, Institutional Transformation, Moving from Theory to Practice, featured Dr. Montgomery, alongside educators from other schools implementing similar reforms. Olivia joined them, initially nervous, but growing more confident as the discussion progressed. When asked about her experience as a student during Westmont's transformation, Olivia spoke thoughtfully about the subtle shifts she had observed. The most significant change wasn't in policies, but in perspective, she explained. When teachers began recognizing that different backgrounds provide different forms of knowledge, not better or worse, just different, classroom discussions became richer. My agricultural experience wasn't treated as something to overcome, but as valuable context that offered unique insights. She continued with growing assurance. This doesn't just benefit students from non-traditional backgrounds. My classmates, from more privileged circumstances, have told me they're thinking differently about environmental issues after learning about sustainable agriculture practices at our farm. Genuine diversity of experience and perspective enhances everyone's education. Dr. Montgomery nodded in agreement, then added her own candid reflection. As educators, we often don't recognize our implicit biases until they're directly challenged. I believed I was evaluating students objectively based on academic merit, but data revealed patterns in my assessments that correlated with socioeconomic background rather than actual ability. Her willingness to acknowledge this bias publicly in front of colleagues and educational leaders demonstrated remarkable professional courage. The most difficult part of this process has been recognizing that despite my best intentions, I was perpetuating systems that limited certain students' opportunities. The liberating part has been discovering how much richer my classroom becomes when I truly value diverse forms of knowledge and expression. The symposium concluded with small group discussions where participants developed concrete strategies to implement at their own institutions. As educational leaders networked during the reception that followed, Olivia found herself approached by the superintendent of a large public school district. Your insights about agricultural knowledge translating to environmental science were fascinating, he said. We've been trying to develop curriculum that connects with our rural students' lived experiences. Would you be interested in consulting on that project? Similar conversations occurred throughout the reception, with Olivia's unique perspective being sought out by educators working in various contexts. By the evening's end, she had collected business cards from 3 different educational organizations, interested in student advisory roles or curriculum development consultation. As attendees departed, Dr. Montgomery found herself standing beside Robert Parker Whitmore, watching Olivia engaged in animated conversation with a group of educators. "She's remarkable," Dr. Montgomery observed. "The intellectual maturity to contextualize her personal experience within broader educational patterns is unusual for someone her age." "She is," Robert agreed, "though I suspect she would have developed that maturity regardless of our intervention here. The question is whether Westmont would have recognized and valued it." The gentle rebuke wasn't lost on Dr. Montgomery. "Probably not," she acknowledged, "at least not as quickly or completely. I've been teaching for 20 years, but this initiative has provided my most significant professional development." The true measure of educational institutions isn't how well they serve those who easily fit their traditional models, Robert replied. "It's how effectively they recognize and nurture excellence in all its variations." In the weeks following the symposium, Westmont experienced subtle but meaningful changes. The most visible was the establishment of the Excellence Through Diversity initiative, which expanded scholarship opportunities for students from underrepresented backgrounds while providing support structures to ensure their success. Less visible, but equally important, were the shifts in teaching practices as faculty implemented insights from their professional development. Evaluation rubrics were redesigned to value diverse forms of knowledge expression, curriculum expanded to include broader perspectives, and classroom discussions explicitly invited connections between academic content and students' varied life experiences. For Olivia, the months following her father's revelation brought unexpected opportunities. Her work with the environmental science competition team attracted attention from agricultural sustainability organizations, leading to an invitation to present at a regional conference on youth environmental leadership. Dr. Montgomery's literature class became a space for exploring questions of identity and authenticity through textual analysis, with Olivia's insights about narrative perspective particularly valued. The teacher who had once dismissed her as intellectually unprepared became one of her strongest advocates, writing a college recommendation letter that specifically highlighted her ability to bring agricultural and environmental contexts to literary analysis. Perhaps most significantly, Olivia discovered a potential career path at the intersection of her interests. Working with Dr. Patel and the Whitmore Foundation's educational team, she began developing curriculum modules that used sustainable agriculture as a framework for teaching environmental science concepts. These modules integrated hands-on experiences with rigorous scientific analysis, making abstract concepts concrete through practical application. "What you're creating has potential far beyond Westmont," Dr. Patel observed after reviewing her initial designs. "This approach could be particularly valuable in under-resourced schools without expensive lab equipment. Students could conduct meaningful scientific investigations using commonly available materials and local environments." This observation sparked an idea that would eventually become Olivia's senior project, a comprehensive curriculum that used agricultural systems to teach biology, chemistry, environmental science, and even economics through accessible place-based learning experiences. The project's potential for addressing educational equity in science education attracted attention from both university researchers and public school administrators. At home, the relationship between Olivia and her father evolved as she gained deeper understanding of his foundation work. While initially hurt by the secrecy surrounding his identity, she came to appreciate the values that had driven that decision. The desire to raise children connected to meaningful work and authentic relationships rather than defined by wealth or status. The farm was never a cover story, Robert explained one evening as they reviewed foundation proposals together. A new shared activity that bridged their two worlds. It's been in our family for generations, and the work we do here matters deeply. The foundation grew from the same values that guide our farming practices: stewardship, sustainability, and creating systems that allow diverse elements to thrive. This integration of seemingly disparate aspects of identity, farmer and philanthropist, student and curriculum developer, teacher and learner, became a central theme in Olivia's college application essays. Rather than positioning her background as something she had overcome or her father's influence as an advantage, she described how moving between different contexts had developed her ability to recognize connections others might miss. One winter afternoon, Dr. Montgomery asked Olivia to stay after class to share some news. "I've been invited to write a book about our experience implementing the Whitmore Initiative," she explained. "The publisher is interested in including student perspectives on how these institutional changes affect educational experiences. Would you consider contributing a chapter?" Olivia was surprised by the invitation. "You want my writing in your book?" "Your perspective spans this transformation uniquely," Dr. Montgomery explained. "From experiencing bias to helping shape solutions. That journey illustrates the core principles we're trying to communicate." The request symbolized how fully the relationship had evolved from that first dismissive classroom encounter. The teacher, who had once suggested Olivia wasn't prepared for advanced coursework, now valued her insights enough to include them in a professional publication. As the academic year progressed, the initial sensation surrounding Olivia's connection to the Whitmore Foundation gradually faded. Students and teachers came to know her as they might have originally, as a thoughtful classmate with unique perspectives on literature and environmental science, whose agricultural background informed her academic contributions in valuable ways. This normalization didn't erase awareness of her father's identity, but integrated it as just one aspect of who she was, neither defining her completely nor irrelevant to understanding her perspective. The transition epitomized what the Whitmore Initiative aimed to achieve: recognition of how various aspects of identity and experience shape intellectual contributions without determining their value. Madison observed this evolution over lunch one spring day. "People see you as Olivia again, not just the Whitmore heiress, though I told you that would happen eventually." "You were right," Olivia acknowledged, "though I'm not sure I would have believed you during those first crazy weeks." "The funny thing is," Madison continued, "you're actually doing more foundation-adjacent work now than you were before everyone knew about it. Your curriculum project, the book chapter, the advisory role with that public school district. You've found your own way to engage with that world without letting it define you." This observation captured something essential about Olivia's journey. Rather than being consumed by her father's identity or rejecting it entirely, she had integrated this new knowledge into her evolving sense of self, finding authentic ways to engage with both agricultural and philanthropic contexts on her own terms. During spring break, representatives from several prestigious universities visited Meadowbrook Farm to see the sustainable agricultural systems that had informed Olivia's curriculum development work. What would once have been unusual, college recruitment officers visiting a working farm, now seemed natural as they recognized the valuable knowledge embedded in agricultural practice. Your approach to integrating scientific concepts with practical applications is exactly what our environmental studies program emphasizes, noted the Yale representative after touring the integrated pest management system. And the curriculum modules you've developed show exceptional ability to translate complex ecological principles into accessible learning experiences. Harvard's admissions officer was equally impressed by the water conservation infrastructure. The engineering principles applied here are sophisticated, and your ability to articulate both the technical and social dimensions of sustainable water management demonstrates the interdisciplinary thinking we value. As university acceptance letters arrived in April, Olivia faced choices that would have seemed impossible during those first difficult weeks at Westmont. Multiple Ivy League institutions offered admission, each emphasizing different aspects of her unusual combination of practical agricultural knowledge and theoretical academic achievement. "I never imagined having these options," she admitted to her father as they reviewed the offers spread across the kitchen table. "A year ago, I was worried about fitting in at Westmont, let alone universities like these." "The options reflect your abilities, not my influence," Robert assured her. "These institutions are recognizing the unique perspective you've developed at the intersection of agricultural practice and environmental theory. That's entirely your achievement." What neither mentioned, but both understood, was how Robert's intervention at Westmont had created conditions where Olivia's unique strengths could be recognized and valued rather than dismissed. The private jet that had landed so dramatically at the school had initiated institutional changes that allowed her authentic excellence to become visible, not by changing her abilities, but by transforming how those abilities were perceived and evaluated. As senior year drew to a close, Dr. Montgomery invited Olivia to speak with her freshman literature class about their upcoming farm visit, an educational connection that had become an annual tradition through the Whitmore Initiative. "When I first came to Westmont, I thought my background was something to minimize or overcome," Olivia told the younger students. "I tried to hide that I lived on a working farm because I assumed it would make people take me less seriously academically." She gestured to the literary works they had been studying, diverse voices exploring questions of identity and belonging. "What I've learned is that our unique perspectives aren't limitations to overcome, but resources that enrich conversations. The experiences that make you different from others don't diminish your contributions. They're often the source of your most valuable insights." As Olivia concluded her remarks, Dr. Montgomery observed the poised young woman who had grown so significantly during her time at Westmont. The transformation wasn't just in Olivia's confidence or achievements, substantial though those were. It was in her ability to integrate seemingly contradictory aspects of identity: farmer's daughter and foundation heiress, practical agriculturalist and theoretical scientist, rural community member and global thinker. That integration represented education at its finest, not forcing students into predetermined molds, but helping them develop their unique potentials while connecting meaningfully with diverse perspectives. It was the vision that had driven Robert Parker Whitmore to land his private jet at Westmont that fateful day, creating ripples of change that would continue long after Olivia's graduation. In her final evaluation of Olivia's senior thesis, Dr. Montgomery wrote words that captured the essence of the journey they had shared. "Your work exemplifies what becomes possible when educational institutions recognize that excellence takes many forms and emerges from diverse backgrounds. The unique perspective you've brought to our community has transformed not just your own educational experience, but our understanding of how authentic learning occurs at the intersection of different forms of knowledge and experience." What had begun with a teacher's humiliation of a farmer's daughter had evolved into a profound reimagining of educational excellence, one that would continue transforming not just Westmont Academy, but educational approaches across the country for years to come. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.